God says, if you skip this, even I can't protect you. You have 22 hours to respond. There are moments in life when heaven leans in, and time begins to whisper warnings that the natural ear cannot hear. This is not one of those ordinary moments where you can afford to delay, dismiss, or doubt. This is a divine crossroad, a sacred intersection between obedience and danger, destiny and delay. The voice within you is not your imagination. It is the infinite God moving through your spirit, urgently beckoning you to act. And when that still small voice turns thunderous with urgency, it means something is shifting in the unseen. You've been given 22 hours, not as a threat, but as a lifeline. You have entered a divine countdown. And here is the truth that shakes every complacent heart. God can only protect what aligns with his will. You're asking him to cover decisions you made without him. You want him to rescue you from consequences he warned you about. But there are moments where silence is disobedience and delay is defiance. Heaven's protection surrounds purpose, not rebellion, and if you miss this moment, if you ignore this instruction, if you pretend you didn't hear it, you may step outside the covering designed to keep you. This is not the time to wait and see. This is the hour to move, to respond, to obey without needing full understanding, because the window is narrow and the storm is real. God's hand is extended, but he will not override your will. He warns because he loves. He gives you a clock because he wants you to live. What you do next could determine what you step in, or what you lose forever. The divine prompt must not be ignored. There is a moment when the silence of God is broken. Not with a shout, not with lightning, but with a whisper so precise, so sudden, that it slices through your spirit like a divine scalpel. This moment comes without fanfare. It doesn't wait for you to be ready. It doesn't check your schedule. It arrives fully loaded with purpose and demands your attention. The divine prompt is not a suggestion. It is a sacred alarm, a spiritual command carrying the full weight of eternity. When it comes, you must act. Not tomorrow, not later, not after confirmation from a dozen others, but now. That inner voice you feel nudging you, that stirring in your chest you can't explain, is the voice of God speaking through your own awareness. He doesn't shout because he resides within, and if you've truly surrendered, you know when it's him. The problem is never clarity, it's courage. People don't disobey because they can't hear. They disobey because they don't like what they hear. But obedience is not about comfort, it's about alignment. Every time you delay the instruction, you dilute the power of the moment. The prompt is a portal. It's God saying, I'm about to move, will you move with me? Yet how often do we pray for guidance while simultaneously rejecting every instruction that inconveniences our comfort zone? We cry for miracles, yet ignore the miracle's first step, immediate obedience. God does not operate on your timeline. He invites you into his, and his moments are divine appointments wrapped in urgency. They don't repeat themselves endlessly. There are doors that open once, and when missed, they close with finality. Not because God is cruel, but because the alignment of time, people, and purpose was orchestrated for that specific moment. The divine prompt comes when heaven and earth synchronize for your breakthrough. Ignoring it is not just risky, it's rebellion. You're not just saying not now, you're saying not ever, because you don't know if that exact window will ever open again. Some are waiting for another sign, another word, another confirmation. But God's already spoken. He gave the vision, the nudge, the warning. Now he's watching your response. And here is the sobering truth. Heaven only funds what heaven initiates. You cannot ask God to bless a path he never told you to walk. You cannot ask him to protect what he told you to leave. His provision is attached to his instruction. If he says go and you stay, then you forfeit the covering that would have shielded you. And when you cry out later, saying, God, why didn't you protect me? He will gently whisper, I did. I tried, but you refused the way of escape. This is the hour where you must sharpen your discernment and harden your resolve. Don't second. Guess the Spirit. The instruction that disrupts you is often the one that saves you. The divine prompt will rarely appeal to logic. It will often seem too soon, too strange, too severe, but that is the nature of the Spirit. It leads, it doesn't negotiate. The question isn't whether you understand, it's whether you trust. Your spirit knows the truth before your mind catches up. That uncomfortable pull, that conviction that won't let go, is God trying to reroute you before disaster strikes, and you can't afford to ignore it. Delayed obedience is still disobedience. Imagine a soldier on a battlefield who hesitates when the commander yells, "Move." His delay could cost lives, his own included. The divine is your commander. When he says move, you must move. Because something beyond your senses is unfolding. Something you cannot see, but that heaven already knows. And here is the mystery. Your obedience activates protection. Your yes unlocks angelic movement. But your silence can cancel the mission. If you skip this, even God cannot shield you from the consequences of willful disobedience. He gave you free will, not so you could wander, but so you could willingly choose him. He gave you a prompt, not to control you, but to guide you into safety. This moment, this word, this instruction. It carries the fingerprints of the Almighty. It is not random. It is not accidental. It is divine timing packaged in the form of conviction. And if you ignore it, if you rationalize it, if you choose what's comfortable over what's holy, you will walk away from what was meant to protect you. The tragedy is not that God didn't speak. The tragedy is that you heard and didn't move. You felt the fire, but stayed in place. You saw the exit, but kept sitting in the burning room. God's prompt is never neutral. Every time you obey, you are elevated. Every time you resist, you stagnate. You want transformation, but you treat his voice like a suggestion. You want protection, but you're unwilling to step into the instruction, and now the clock is ticking. You have 22 hours, not to impress God, but to respond to him. Not to earn his love, but to accept his protection. This is not about works. It's about willingness. It's about alignment. Heaven is watching. The prompt has been given, and your window is closing. The question is not whether God will be faithful. The question is, will you be? Imagination is the battlefield of obedience. Every war you fight begins in the theater of your imagination. Long before your feet step into disobedience or your mouth rejects God's command, your mind has already entertained an image, a possibility, a fear, or a fantasy that opposed the will of God. Imagination is not child's play. It is spiritual warfare in disguise. It is the canvas upon which your destiny is either painted with obedience or smeared with rebellion. When God speaks, he plants a vision, an idea, a divine impulse, but almost instantly the adversary counters with an image of doubt, delay, or dread. The battlefield is not in the clouds, it's in your thoughts. This is why the word warns you to cast down imaginations, because imaginations can either be altars or idols. They are the birthplace of your response to God. Before you take action, you've already responded internally. You have said yes or no with your mental pictures, your inner rehearsals, your daydreams or nightmares. This is why the divine prompt can feel so hard to follow. It's not your legs that are resisting, it's the images in your mind. You're picturing loss, disaster, humiliation, and failure. But what if God's prompting is not pulling you into loss, but delivering you from it? What if the enemy's most powerful weapon isn't temptation, but suggestion? The whisper that says, if you obey, you'll lose everything, is not truth. It's a lie projected through your imagination. You think you're being cautious, but you're actually being manipulated by visual fear. You think you're being rational, but you're being seduced by false outcomes that haven't even happened. This is how many miss God. They obey their inner movies more than his inner voice, and now you understand why imagination must be sanctified. You cannot afford to let your mind be a screen for fear and rebellion. If you do, you will hesitate every time God calls you higher. When he says move, your imagination will show you a cliff, not a bridge. When he says forgive, your imagination will show you betrayal, not healing. When he says let go, your imagination will show you poverty, not freedom. That is the trap. That is how disobedience begins, not with an outright no, but with an inward image that says, this isn't safe. And here is where the real battle lies. Do you trust the picture in your mind or the presence in your spirit? Because God will often lead you beyond what makes sense. His instructions will violate your comfort, but never your calling. If you keep following what you can see in the flesh, you'll keep ignoring what's being whispered to you in the spirit. That's why the prompt from God must be met with imagination trained in truth. You must learn to see what he sees, to feel what he's creating, even when your environment screams the opposite. This is the secret. Imagination is not evil, it's a tool, but tools in the wrong hands can destroy. If fear holds your imagination, it will build strongholds. But if faith holds your imagination, it will build futures. The power lies in what you allow to play on your mental screen. Every divine instruction comes with invisible support, but your imagination must believe it exists. When God told Abraham to leave everything familiar, he didn't hand him a map. He handed him a vision. Look at the stars, look at the sand, so shall your descendants be. God used Abraham's imagination to strengthen his faith. Because faith isn't blind, it sees what the natural eye can't. But if your imagination is filled with trauma, doubt, or pride, then when the prompting comes, you'll filter it through wounds instead of wonder. And then you'll say, that can't be God, not because God didn't speak, but because your imagination was too poisoned to receive the vision. You'll say no to the call and yes to the fear, thinking you're being safe, when really you're being stolen from. How many divine appointments have you missed because your imagination was rehearsing failure? How many miracles have you aborted because your mind couldn't picture it working out? That's the danger. God can give you the instruction, but if your mind is married to fear, you'll turn it down every time. So when the prompt comes, and it has come, you must capture the images playing in your mind. Replace them with the vision God gave. Build altars with your imagination, not excuses. Visualize the promise, not the pitfall. When he says go, see yourself already there. When he says forgive, see yourself already free. When he says sow, see the harvest before you feel the emptiness. This is not fantasy, it's faith. This is what obedience looks like from the inside out, because the battlefield is not only in your actions, it's in your thoughts. And if you win there, you win everywhere. The 22-hour window God has given you isn't just about time. It's about what you'll allow yourself to see before time runs out. Will you picture disaster or deliverance? Will you imagine judgment or joy? Will you believe what God is showing your spirit, or what fear is showing your mind? The hour is urgent, not because God is panicking, but because your window to reshape your imagination and respond in obedience is closing. If you wait too long, the images of fear become permanent. You'll talk yourself out of what God already secured for you. So today, take your thoughts captive. Don't let fear drive your imagination. Don't let anxiety paint false pictures. Don't let logic override divine impulse. Reclaim your imagination and make it serve the voice of God, because if you don't see it his way, you'll never obey, and without obedience, even God can't protect you. Not because he doesn't want to, but because he won't override the battlefield you've chosen to lose. You have 22 hours. Rebuild your inner vision now. Delayed alignment is disobedience in disguise. The lie that most people comfortably tell themselves is this: I'm not saying no to God, I'm just waiting for the right time. But this is not obedience. It is the most refined form of disobedience, one that wears the mask of patience while harboring fear, rebellion, and control underneath. When God gives you an instruction, it is not subject to your convenience or your comfort. It is not a suggestion to pencil into your calendar. It is an urgent call to align, to move, to obey. There is a divine rhythm to your life, a timing, a flow, a sequence of supernatural events. And when you delay even slightly, you throw off the entire alignment of what heaven is trying to set up for you. Every second matters when you are being positioned for destiny. You think you are buying time, but in truth you are spending grace. Delayed alignment is a thief in disguise. It steals the momentum of faith, the clarity of instruction, and the freshness of revelation. The longer you delay, the dimmer the voice becomes. What once stirred your spirit now becomes an echo you can barely recall. That is the price of delay. Not only do you risk missing the moment, you risk growing numb to the voice that called you. This is why God moves quickly, why his instruction often feels like it demands an instant yes, because your miracle, your protection, your provision It's all connected to timing. Like a train that arrives precisely once, your delay means you are left standing on a platform, watching purpose move on without you. You may still love God, you may still pray, but your delay disconnected you from that moment of glory, and now you are asking him to loop back and make it convenient again. But he won't, not because he is cruel, but because he is holy. God is not your assistant. He is the architect, and when the divine blueprint is set, you either build when he says build, or you lose the foundation he laid in that hour. The tragedy is not in the lack of instruction, it's in the failure to respond. So many say, I'll do it later, I need more time, I'm not ready yet. But God doesn't call the ready, he readies the called. When he prompts, he already sees what's coming. He's not working within your sight, he's working from his foresight. What looks premature to you is perfect timing in the eternal realm. That's why he gives you a word that feels uncomfortable, because he's positioning you for what your eyes have not yet seen. If you delay, you are not just being cautious. You are dislocating yourself from the flow of divine provision, and then you pray for protection over a life that no longer sits under divine alignment. You pray for peace in a place God told you to leave. You pray for breakthrough on a path he never led you to walk. That is the danger of delay. It convinces you that you're still connected when you've already stepped out of divine sequence. You think your heart is still aligned because your intentions are good. But God doesn't respond to intention. He responds to obedience. His protection is not tied to your plans, your comfort, or your timeline. It's tied to your submission. If you delay the instruction, you delay the protection. That's why many suffer avoidable pain, not because God abandoned them, but because they refused to align when he called. Heaven was ready, the angels were positioned, the way was prepared, but they said, not yet. They said, I need more signs. They said, what if it's just me thinking this? But deep down they knew, the Spirit bears witness, that holy agitation you feel, that pull that won't let you go, that whisper that keeps returning. It's not your imagination, it's divine urgency. You're being called out of delay and into now, because now is where protection lives. Now is where provision dwells. Now is where purpose unfolds. Every delay is a door left open to the enemy. You may think you're still safe, but spiritual exposure begins the moment you disobey, even passively. And passive disobedience is the most dangerous because it masquerades as spiritual maturity. You say you're discerning, you say you're testing the Spirit, but you're really testing how long you can delay before the consequences show up. Don't confuse God's patience with his approval. Just because judgment hasn't hit yet doesn't mean you're in the clear. He's giving you space to realign, but that space is not infinite. You have 22 hours, not because God is measuring time, but because he is measuring trust. Can you obey without all the pieces? Can you move without all the answers? Can you say yes while still trembling? If you can't, then you're not obeying. You're negotiating, and God does not make deals with delayed hearts. He gives instruction, he releases vision, and he expects alignment, full, immediate, trusting alignment, because the clock is ticking, and while you ponder, you may miss the last chance to stay under the cloud of divine direction. Some doors don't close with noise. They close with silence. You won't hear it slam. You'll just realize one day that what stirred you no longer stirs you, that what burned in your chest has grown cold. That is what delay does. It kills passion in slow motion, but today you have a chance. The window is not yet closed. The call is still echoing. You are being offered mercy, not because you deserve it, but because he still wants you aligned. Not so he can punish you, but so he can protect you. The prompt was not punishment. It was positioning, and your delay is not safety. It is slow rebellion. You have 22 hours to come back into divine alignment. Not out of fear, but out of faith. Not because you're being threatened, but because you're being loved. Obedience is the highest form of trust, and trust is what opens the heavens. So move, align, respond. Because if you skip this, even God won't override your delay. The covering is moving, and you must move with it. The danger of comfortable rebellion, there is a form of rebellion so subtle, so cleverly disguised, that even the most devout believers don't recognize it as disobedience. It does not scream no. To God it whispers later. It doesn't come wrapped in defiance. It comes dressed in logic, in comfort, in practicality. This is what I call comfortable rebellion, the most dangerous spiritual posture you can fall into. It is the false peace you feel while ignoring the voice of God. It is the quiet confidence that convinces you that delay is wisdom, when in reality, delay is a disguised rejection of the divine order. Comfortable rebellion says, I'm not against God, I'm just trying to be wise. But wisdom that delays obedience is not wisdom from above. It is fear pretending to be discernment. God is not looking for a well-planned response. He is looking for surrendered obedience. Comfortable rebellion will make you build a whole life around disobedience and then ask God to bless it. It will have you rationalizing why you stayed in a place He told you to leave, why you clung to a relationship He asked you to release, why you built a business, a ministry, or a life without His hand on it. And then when the storms come, you ask, God, where are you? And heaven responds, I was never in this, you were. God does not bless what you've built in rebellion, even if it's beautiful. His protection covers obedience, not convenience. You may have peace in your heart, but if that peace is rooted in avoidance, it is not real peace. It is spiritual sedation. Comfortable rebellion is when you are lulled into a false sense of safety because your disobedience doesn't look like rebellion. It looks like busyness, it looks like wisdom, it looks like stewardship, but beneath the surface it's still a no to God. It's a refusal to go when He says go. It's a refusal to act when He says act. And the danger of this rebellion is that it becomes your normal. You start to live in partial obedience and call it surrender. You do some of what God says and expect all of His protection, but heaven doesn't honor half-hearted obedience. God does not play games with purpose. He will not partner with rebellion even if it feels reasonable to you. Comfortable rebellion is what caused Saul to lose his kingdom. He obeyed most of the instruction, but not all. And when confronted, he said, I thought, as if his thoughts could override God's command, you do not get to modify what God says. You do not get to tweak the prompt to fit your schedule or emotions. You either obey or you rebel. There is no middle ground, and this is where many chosen ones fall. They don't reject God. They just comfortably postpone Him, and every postponement is a step out of divine timing. You ask God to protect you, but He's calling you to obey first, because the protection is in the prompt, not the prayer. You can't pray your way around disobedience. You can't fast your way out of rebellion. What God is asking you to do, only your surrender can fulfill. He will not send angels to do what your yes was designed to unlock, and that's the danger. You think you're safe because nothing has collapsed yet. You think you're covered because judgment hasn't fallen yet. But comfortable rebellion builds your life on grace you think is guaranteed when it was actually conditional upon your obedience. Grace gives you space, but not forever. Eventually, the structure of your disobedience will collapse under its own weight, and God, in His mercy, is giving you 22 hours, not as a punishment, but as a final window to realign, not to shame you, but to awaken you. Comfortable rebellion doesn't shout. It creeps. It numbs you slowly. It convinces you that you have time, that you're fine, that God understands. But here is what many forget. God understands everything. He understands that you're scared. He understands that you're uncertain. But He also understands that your yes is overdue, and delayed obedience is still disobedience, even if your intentions are good. Comfortable rebellion is often rooted in a desire to stay in control. You want to say yes to God, but only if it comes with guarantees. You want to surrender, but only if you understand the outcome. That's not surrender, that's negotiation. And God does not enter contracts with rebellion. He responds to trust. When He prompts you, He already factored in the fear, the risk, the loss. He's not surprised by your anxiety, but He still expects your obedience. Because faith is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move in spite of it. When you live in comfortable rebellion, you live in spiritual deception. You begin to mistake activity for alignment. You go to church, you serve, you post scriptures, but you're still out of order. You're busy but disobedient. You're anointed but misaligned. You're vocal but void of divine fire, because you ignored the one thing God was really asking for, your obedience. That instruction you've been delaying, that conversation you keep avoiding, that place He told you to walk away from, It's not going away, and until you respond, you'll feel the quiet unrest that haunts every chosen one who knows they've resisted the call. But you still have time, you still have 22 hours. This isn't about punishment, it's about realignment. God is calling you to break the cycle of comfortable rebellion. He's inviting you back into radical obedience. Not the kind that waits for everything to be safe and clear, but the kind that says, "Lord, I don't understand it all, but I trust you." That is what activates the protection. That is what positions you under the cloud of favor. Your delay has already cost you too much. Don't let comfort become your coffin. Don't let reason become your religion. Don't let rebellion dress itself in robes of false peace. Tear it down now. Say yes now. Move now, because if you skip this, even God won't protect what you built in rebellion. He loves you too much to bless what he never initiated. You have 22 hours. Come out of comfort. Come out of rebellion. Obey while there is still time. 22 hours is not a deadline. It's a divine mercy clock. Time in the realm of the Spirit is never just time. It is grace measured, mercy extended, and destiny waiting to be chosen. When God gives you 22 hours, it is not a countdown meant to scare you. It is a divine act of compassion, a final window carved out of eternity for your deliverance. This is not about a deadline, but a divine mercy clock ticking with purpose, warning, and profound love. Most people misunderstand divine urgency. They mistake God's promptings for pressure, as if the Almighty were trying to rush them without reason. But God is not in a hurry. He is in alignment, and when he tells you now, he's not reacting. He's revealing. He knows what lies ahead. He sees the trap forming, the storm brewing, the opportunity fading. So when he speaks with urgency, it's not to frighten you, it's to save you. The 22-hour window is not fear-based, it's faith-based. It is a mercy clock designed to bring you back into position before the consequence of disobedience sets in. Heaven is not operating in panic. Heaven is operating in precision. The clock you hear ticking is not judgment, it's grace. Grace giving you space to respond, not with anxiety, but with humility, with surrender, with trust. Because the truth is, if God wanted to punish you, he would not give you time. He would give you silence. But he hasn't gone silent. He's speaking loudly, clearly, repeatedly, through dreams, through people, through conviction, through sudden restlessness in your soul. That feeling that won't let you rest is not anxiety, it's divine insistence. God is interrupting your comfort to spare your future. The mercy clock is counting down not to a doom, but to a doorway. You are being invited to walk away from what is about to collapse, to walk into what is about to be revealed. This 22-hour window is not about legalism or fear. It is about invitation. The invitation to obey before it's too late. The invitation to step into alignment while the gates of opportunity are still open. Because yes, there are gates. Yes, there are timings. Yes, there are doors that only open once. You think you have time because nothing bad has happened yet, but God sees the moment the enemy's plan reaches maturity. He sees the exact second your delay becomes dangerous. That's why he calls now. That's why he's so insistent, because love warns, and this is a warning born from love. Not the kind of love that coddles, but the kind that corrects. That shakes you out of your sleep and reminds you that purpose is time sensitive, that breakthrough is not automatic, it's obeyed into, that protection is not unconditional, it's positional. You can pray all you want, but if you stay outside of the covering, your prayer becomes a cry God already tried to prevent. He tried to shield you through instruction. He tried to cover you through obedience. He tried to warn you through conviction, but you didn't want to move. You didn't want to change, and now here you are with a final window, 22 hours to decide if you trust him enough to surrender. Don't mistake his mercy for indifference. Don't confuse his patience for permission. You've been asking for signs, and the clock is the sign. It is not measuring your worth. It is measuring your willingness. Are you willing to leave that place, release that person, take that step, obey that prompt before it's too late? Are you willing to act while there is still grace to cover the transition? Because once the clock runs out, the shift will happen, with or without you. And what you were supposed to be part of, you will now only watch from the outside. Not because God rejected you, but because you refused to move when the Spirit moved. This is what people don't understand about windows of mercy. They close, not because God is cruel, but because alignment cannot wait on your indecision. The opportunity to step into divine protection is being offered now. But soon the door will be shut, not in anger, but in holiness, because heaven cannot wait on your comfort. It cannot pause destiny to accommodate your delay. You've had the dream, you've heard the word, you've felt the pull, and now the final invitation comes in the form of time. 22 hours of divine mercy. 22 hours to respond while the covering is still extended. Not forever, not indefinitely, but for now, and this is your now. This is the kind of mercy that feels like fire in your chest, urgency in your bones, and clarity in your soul. It's not panic, it's presence. The presence of God wrapping you in one last opportunity to shift before it's too late. You don't need another prophecy. You don't need another dream. You don't need another confirmation. You already know. The question is, will you trust the mercy clock more than your comfort zone? Will you obey before the atmosphere changes? Will you move before the trap springs? Because this clock is not counting down to destruction. It's counting down to your exit. Your way out, your deliverance, but it requires your yes, not tomorrow, not eventually, now, because heaven is in motion, and if you don't respond, even God cannot override your free will. You'll be left with what you chose, your will over his warning. Your convenience over his correction, but you don't have to go that way. Not today. Today, the clock is still ticking and grace is still calling. This is not a threat. It's a chance, not punishment, but protection. Will you take it? Will you trust it? Will you move while there is still time? Because 22 hours may seem like a warning, but it is really a rescue dressed in urgency. Respond now, before mercy becomes memory.